Hey everyone, Devin here. Just wanted to record a quick demo to show how you could take an existing component that you might already have and make it more accessible using React Aria. So here I've got a basic setup already. So you can see I'm using Tailwind CSS for the styling in this case, and I've got some components that I've already made. So when I click this button, you can see I've got a dialog here with kind of a sign up form um, and and some buttons and stuff. So just a basic dialogue. And but what you'll notice is there's a few issues here with accessibility that I'd like to point out, and then we can try to fix. So first off, you can notice that if I open this dialog, you can see the focus ring is actually still back there on this button. So focus isn't really moving into the dialog properly when it opens. And so if I tab forward, I'll get there, but it should move into the dialog as soon as it opens automatically. The other issue here is that the focus doesn't isn't contained within the dialog. So if I tab forward here, I actually ended up down here out of the dialog. Or you can see if I tab backward, actually get back to this button that's kind of outside the dialog here as well. So it's generally recommended that dialogues contain focus within them so that the user can more easily navigate around without kind of going to things that are kind of hidden or outside the dialog. So those are the first couple issues that we need to solve. So here I show you basically the setup we've got here is like we've got an application. I've made this dialog trigger component. That's basically this button. Has this label for the button there, and then you pass a dialog component as a child, and that's what shows up in here. So I've made this dialog component. It's got like a title and a label for the sign up button down here, and then just some contents, a couple text fields and a checkbox. So take a look at that dialog component. So a couple things. We've got here an outer div, which is kind of this fixed position wrapper thing that's taking over the whole page here. This is a backdrop, so this is that this kind of grayish background color that's kind of covering the whole page. And then this is our actual dialog here with this rectangle. And then we've got our title, which is just an H3. And we pass in our children, which is this whole area down here. And then at the bottom, we have a couple buttons. And when these are pressed, it just triggers this on close prop on the dialog's props. And that ends up closing the dialog. So the state for that is actually managed by the dialog trigger, which renders this button out here. And then it has just a piece of regular React state here to keep track of whether the dialog's open or not. When you press the button, it sets it to open. When it's open, it takes the children, clones those so that it can add this is open prop and an on close prop, and that's how the button here can can close the dialog from within it, and that just calls set open to set to false. And this dialog is also rendered into a portal, which puts it at the end of the document body. So if I were to inspect this, you would see this dialog here is here at the end of the document body, and then my actual app is inside this root element back here. So we're getting a nice portal there, which will make sure that we're outside of any overflow behavior that's going on. All right, so let's see if we can fix a couple of these problems, because I mentioned before the focus doesn't go into the dialog, and then it's not really contained inside there either, which would be a good feature for accessibility. So the way we're going to do this is using some components and hooks from React Aria, which is a nice library of hooks to make building accessible components more easy. So first, what we're going to need is the focus scope component. So I'm going to import that focus scope from React Aria /focus. And focus scope, essentially you wrap some children within it, and it will make sure that focus is either contained within there or and that's kind of the main feature, but it can do a couple other things as well. So let's do that first. So we'll say focus scope contain, and we'll just wrap our dialog element in that. So I'll save that. And now when I open this dialog up, you can see once I've put focus in here, when I tab through, when I tab to the end, it goes back to the beginning. And if I shift tab, it'll go backwards. So now we've got focus containment in our dialog with just one line of code. But I mentioned the other thing was we wanted focus to move into the dialog when it first opens. And actually, we'd like this first input really to receive focus. So we can do that by adding the auto focus prop to the focus scope as well. And then when the dialog opens, it'll auto focus the first focusable thing within it. So now if I click on the button again, you can see focus immediately moved to the first input within it. So already doing pretty well here, improving some accessibility pretty easily. Okay, so one other thing that's important with dialogues is for keyboard users to be able to close them easily. And usually this is done using the escape key. So right now I'm pressing the escape key and nothing's happening. So we need to wire this up. Now I could do this manually. I could add a keyboard listener and all that stuff, but React Aria has a hook for this that will also help us with another feature, which is kind of nice, which is when you want to click outside on this backdrop, it'd be nice if the dialog closed as well. So to do that, we're going to use the use overlay hook. Use overlay from React Aria /overlays. Okay. And so what we need to do, and the general pattern with these React Aria hooks, is you pass it some props and maybe a ref, and it gives you back some other props that you can apply to your specific DOM elements. So I'm going to say, let's see, let overlay props equal use overlay, press the props in, and I'm going to need a ref. Let's see, so ref equals use ref, and I need to import that. And I'm going to apply the ref here to our dialog element so that use overlay has access to it. And you can see here I've called use overlay. This says it provides the behavior for overlays and popovers, menus, those type of things, and handles the escape key. So perfect. So all I need to do now is take this props that it's returned and apply this as well to our dialog element. So if I just spread that on there, and I save all this, now when I open up the dialog again and I press escape, dialog closes. And if I click outside, dialog also closes. Super nice. Okay, now one other thing that would be good is when I hit escape, or when I close the dialog in any way, like focus doesn't really go anywhere. Like now I don't know where focus went. It kind of went like to the page, I think. You can see kind of in Firefox shows you the little outline there. But it'd be nice, and generally what's recommended is for when you close the dialog, for focus to be restored back to whatever opens the dialog, in this case, this button right here. And luckily, focus scope makes this quite easy as well. So we can just put the restore focus prop on focus scope here, and it'll take care of that. So now if I open this back up and I hit escape again, you can see focus was restored back to this button right here, and the focus ring showed up. So great, another feature down. Okay, so let's take a look at some accessibility properties here. And we need to use, Firefox has this built-in accessibility inspector that's really good. So we can right click on the dialog here and select inspect accessibility properties. So you can see this is showing the accessibility tree, and you can kind of ignore the outer ones because there's this iframe here. But for this frame, you can see the accessibility tree. So let's see, we've got things inside the dialog here. We've also got this section out here. Oh, and that's our button behind the dialog. Okay. Okay, well, the other problem here is that like there's nothing indicating to like a screen reader or anything that's going to use the accessibility tree here, like that this is a dialog at all. So we kind of need to fix that problem first. So these semantics are really important, and providing semantic elements is really important because it helps screen readers and other assistive technology make sense of this kind of div soup that we've created here. Yeah, you see we've got all these divs, but like they don't really have any meaning associated with them. So it's really hard for a screen reader to kind of like know what's going on here. So we need to apply some Aria attributes, and Aria is the accessible rich internet application spec, and it provides a bunch of attributes to HTML elements to provide them with semantics. So React Aria implements a lot of this, and will help us out here. So let's close that for a second. And I'm gonna import use dialog from React Aria /dialog. All right, and then I need to kind of do the same thing as I did with overlays here for the dialog. So let's see, dialog props equals use dialog, and I need to pass it the props and the ref again. All right, and then I just kind of also spread those props onto the dialog element. Okay, so I'll open up the dialog again and maybe inspect the expect this again. Oh, check this out. Now we have a dialog. So now it knows, the accessibility tree is showing that it knows that this is a dialog. So how does it know that? Well, let's just inspect element here and see what's going on. So you can see it's added a role equals dialog attribute here, and also a tab index to make sure that this dialog is actually focusable. And this role here is what's really giving it that semantics. So in the accessibility tree, you can see that it knows it's a dialog. But we do have one issue showing up here, which is that we need a label. So when it reads the dialog, it needs to know like a name for it so that it knows what to say when it's reading the dialog. So it says dialog should be labeled. Luckily, we have an element already, that's the title here in the DOM, but we just need to associate it with that dialog so it knows that's the name of the dialog. Luckily, use dialog makes this pretty easy, and it actually returns a title props as well. And we just need to take this title props here and assign this to our H3 here to associate the title with the dialog. All right, so title props actually. Okay, so now if I open up this dialog again, you can see we've got dialog and it's labeled now as sign up. So how is it doing that? If we inspect element again, you'll see that the dialog here has an aria labeled by attribute. It's got this long random ID string here. But you can see that this ID matches the ID attribute that is placed automatically on the H3 for us. So just by taking this title props here and applying it to the H3, we automatically get this nice ARIA association between the dialog and the title. So we've already improved our accessibility quite a bit just by applying a couple lines of code. Okay, so one other problem here that we notice when we look at the accessibility tree is that this button that's outside the dialog is actually still visible even while the dialog's open, and that's kind of going to be frustrating for a screen reader user because they're going to be navigating around with kind of a virtual cursor as they move around, and they're going to navigate to this, which is outside the dialog, but they don't really know, they're not really going to know that it's outside the dialog, and that it shouldn't really be accessed. And sighted users can't interact with that while the dialog's open, so neither should screen reader users, right? So what we need to do is actually make this dialog modal. And modal, a modal means that the user can't interact with anything outside that dialog while it's open. So there's a couple steps to do this. First of all, we need to import use modal from React Aria / overlays, I think. I guess I could put it up here as well. Combine the imports. Okay, so to do this, I'm just going to do the same pattern again. Modal props equals use modal. And actually, this doesn't take any arguments in this case. And then we just need to apply this as well to our dialog element. Now, at this point, it's not actually going to do anything because there's a couple other things that we need to set up. So in order to implement this, what we actually have to do is apply this Aria hidden attribute to everything outside of the dialog. And this is kind of backwards from the way that React components typically work. And in React, typically you're only affecting things within your component. But in this case, we actually have to affect stuff outside of our dialog in order to hide it. And so this is implemented by React Aria using a context. And so when use modal is called, it actually tells the parent providers on the page, hey, I've got a modal open now. And then that will take care of hiding everything else. So we need to import a couple other components here to handle that. So first off, we actually need to replace this portal down here with an implementation of the same thing in React Aria that also handles this modal aspect. And so that's the overlay container component. I'm sorry, that's actually from the overlays package. And so we'll just replace the portal here with this overlay container, and that's what's going to communicate with the outer providers to indicate that it's within a modal. So we got that, and now what we need to do is wrap our application actually inside of a overlay provider. So I need to import overlay provider from React Aria / overlays. And then I just need to wrap this application in that and save this. And so now when a modal opens, this use modal is going to indicate to the overlay provider that, hey, there's a modal open now. And then this overlay container is going to keep track of where the boundary is between the modal and the rest of our app. So with this, we should be able to open our dialog again and inspect accessibility properties. And now you see that section that we had that's outside the dialog is empty now. So that button is being hidden. So let's take a look at what happened in our DOM structure. If we inspect element again, you'll see we've got our dialog here still, and that's all the same. But if we go to our application, you'll see that it's got this Aria hidden attribute on it. And that's the overlay provider element handling, doing that. And then if I close my dialog, you'll see Aria hidden got removed automatically from this div. And my dialog is gone. So now when I inspect accessibility properties again, you'll see there's my push button. So hiding everything outside of the dialog pretty simply by adding a couple wrappers around our dialog. So now we have a pretty much fully accessible dialog component here. We can tab through it, and it makes sure that the focus is contained within the dialog, and auto focuses it on open. We can hit escape or click outside, and it restores focus back to the button. And we made sure that for screen readers, we're hiding everything outside the dialog. And we made sure that this thing has semantics and is connected to the title and is labeled properly. So now we should, screen reader users should be able to use our dialog pretty easily, as well as keyboard users. So that's kind of how a look at how it works to take an existing HTML structure that you might already have in an application and make that fully accessible using React Aria. Hope you enjoyed. Please let me know what you thought. Thanks.